Yeah, something weird happened with that whole thing.
Yeah, I still don't have any clue. All
We
right.
will get this rolling here. We should get tagged.
Yeah.
And well, I guess you're getting tagged. I'm not getting tagged. So let me go to Broadway Sports Media's Twitter account as people filter in and we get some views here. Didn't even look right. Take two. Right here. Watch us. The Periscope looks off too. I don't know what's going on today, but we're getting some people filtered in. We'll have chat. Sorry we can't, ask you guys to join us today, but we'll put your chat up here and we'll both be able to see it. Everybody will be able to see your chat, and we'll answer your questions as they filter in. Not as many people as what we were hoping so far because the spaces, I guess, seems a little bit better. So as we get people to filter in, maybe we can get some stuff going and all that kind of stuff. Here we go. 9 people getting filtered in. Oh, man. Okay. Well, Mike, we really had something lined up. We were really going to get into it. And you started talking. And as soon as you started talking and I started asking the questions, I couldn't hear you anymore.
Yeah.
And
And
I called
then
you
I
a
tried to
coward.
log. I tried to log back in. I could hear myself from previous talking, so I have no idea how that works.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened, but hopefully we'll get some more people in because I know people, they want to hear the takes, right? This is what everybody wants. They're obsessed with Josh Reynolds. They're obsessed with who the wide receiver 3 is, and I have no clue why because we all know the wide receiver 3 is Josh Reynolds. It is.
Look,
It's
it
100% is.
doesn't
And let me say
it look,
something. Go ahead. Go ahead. You go
it doesn't
ahead.
even matter who the wide receiver 3 is. The wide receiver 3 is like an afterthought. It is going to be AJ Brown, Julio Jones, and Derrick Henry. I mean, those are the guys that are going to get the ball like 80% of the plays. So, and then you're going to get Ferkser and whoever the wide receiver 3 is. Because I just don't look, Reynolds is the most likely option, right? Like nobody's disputing that. He's got the most experience. He's had the most success at the NFL level of anybody on the roster outside of Julio and AJ. Obviously, no one's disputing that, but it is not like a huge gap right now, and that's a compliment more so to Marcus Johnson and Chester Rogers and what they're doing in camp than it is a slight at Josh Reynolds. I mean, Josh Reynolds is fine. We haven't seen him. Like he came over from another team. He had a decent year last year, 618 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's fine. Not bad, but it is not a season that makes him untouchable. They're paying him less than they paid freaking Kevin Johnson. They paid Kevin Johnson $500,000 more in free agency than they did to Josh Reynolds. That is their level of commitment to this guy. It is not in any way a huge contract or even like a contract that's enough to make me say, well, they just can't cut him because they would never. Like, who cares? It's $1.75 million. That's like a little bit more than the vet minimum. He's making like $762,000 more than Marcus Johnson this year. That's not enough money to make it worth a difference in contract. It's just going to come down to performance and who performs better. And right now, Marcus Johnson is performing better. And, Josh Reynolds may have an injury issue or has had an injury issue that he's working back from. So we'll give him time and see what he looks like in a couple weeks. But I'm just saying, like, if Marcus Johnson keeps playing like he is right now, and Josh Reynolds doesn't kick it on or this whatever the injury is lingers and he's just not 100%, yeah, I would play Marcus Johnson right now. If the Titans were to play a game that mattered right now, and you asked me who would be the top 3 wide receivers I'd want on the field to play this week, I would say AJ Brown, Julio Jones, and Marcus Johnson. That would be my answer.
Because he's injured. So let's take injury off the table. You're just dismissing everything that he's done in his NFL career and not acknowledging.
I'm saying he's the most likely guy.
He
I'm
is the
saying
guy.
he's the
It's
most
not
likely
most
guy.
likely. He is the guy.
No,
Why
they're
are
not
we
paying him. They're not paying him like he's set
money
in
does not
stone.
matter.
It does. It
No,
tells
it
you
doesn't.
exactly what they think of that guy.
So because that Josh Reynolds' agent negotiated a poor contract, or he took less money for more opportunities, which he said he was promised. By the way, he said that himself.
I guarantee he didn't. Nobody was out there offering him a $5 million contract, and he took $1.75 million. Right? I
Well,
mean, if he took less, he took
I
$250,000 less.
think what shows that they were comfortable with Josh Reynolds was the fact that if it wasn't for the Julio Jones trade, we're talking about our wide receiver too.
Look, I think they like Josh Reynolds, but I think they like Marcus Johnson too. Marcus Johnson has done outstanding at Titans camp. That's
You can
really what
like
we're
Marcus Johnson, but this is the same stuff we heard about
the
Khalif
team.
Raymond.
The team likes Marcus Johnson too. Yeah, and Khalif Raymond ended up having a role for this football team.
Yeah.
I think Marcus Johnson is going to have a role for this football team. And I would not be totally shocked if Josh Reynolds doesn't get together as far as physically being ready to play and get out on the field and really show something. He needs to be good. He does. He can't just
already
go up.
shown it.
Well, I mean, I'm giving him credit for that. But look, that doesn't really matter for this year. He still has to come out and perform at camp. He has not done anything in a Titans uniform yet. And neither has Marcus Johnson. But frankly, Marcus Johnson was in camp last year, or not in camp, but he was with the Titans for the back half of last season. So he's been with the team for a little while. He knows the offense pretty well, knows the guys. I just think we should not dismiss the idea that Marcus Johnson and Chester Rogers could compete for snaps ahead of Josh Reynolds. Now, I don't think it's going to be exclusive. Whoever the wide receivers three is going to be, it's not going to be exclusive. They're going to have different roles. They're different types of receivers. But I don't think we should dismiss those guys. That's all I'm saying. They're making catches all the time in camp. They look great.
I'm not dismissing them. I'm just saying they are what they are. They're wide receiver 4 and wide receiver 5. I mean, that's what they are. I mean, that's what they've been their whole career. Nothing's really going to ever change that. That's what they are. And then, I mean, this idea that Josh Reynolds may not even make the fucking team. Are we kidding?
Here's the thing with that. It's about, all right, so if Marcus Johnson did become, say, their wide receiver 3, say Marcus Johnson just balls out in camp in preseason and Reynolds just whatever, he's not healthy or he's just okay or whatever. If he doesn't get that job, then what does he do for it? Like, he's not going to be a special teams guy. He's not really a punt returner. He's not going to be a gunner. So then it becomes, all right, well, so if you're going to keep Chester Rogers, you're going to keep Marcus Johnson, and then, Racey McMath looks really good at times in camp. Are they going to cut Des Fitzpatrick, their 4th round pick? I mean, it just becomes more of a question of, does his value this year outweigh the value of like what they think they can develop Racey and Dez into in 2 to 3 years? I think that's a question.
Well,
I think, look, it's highly unlikely.
It's a 1-year contract. I mean, are they really going to cut Josh Reynolds instead of keeping him when an injury could happen and you're going to need someone that has NFL experience like Josh Reynolds? Even if this worst case scenario, this preposterous idea that he's somehow not going to be wide receiver 3 comes to fruition.
I'm saying he's probably 60+% the wide receiver 3, and I think he's 95% plus on the roster. Like, it's very unlikely, but I just don't think we should chisel his name in stone because, look, the contract tells you a lot about what they are thinking about this guy and how committed they are to him financially. And they are not committed to him financially. I don't care what anyone else is making. He's not making enough money to where it would be like, wow, we can't cut that guy because we've got all this money tied up in him. He's just not there with the contract. So he has to show them through performance that he is worth keeping around. And we just haven't seen enough yet to know what he is. So we're starting to get a good feel for what Chester Rogers is. We're starting to get a good feel for what Marcus Johnson is with the Titans. Like, I don't really care about what they've done elsewhere. They both had some opportunities with the Colts and made some catches, put up some numbers. Huge numbers, not as good as Josh Reynolds.
Yeah,
but they've had NFL experience, and it doesn't really matter. Like, the 600 yards that Josh Reynolds got last year versus the 200 something yards that Chester Rogers and Marcus Johnson got last year. Those numbers don't do anything for you in 2021. Like, they just don't matter. It matters about who's going to play best for you when you get on the field. in week 1 against the Cardinals. And we'll see. Like I like Josh Reynolds. I liked him when they signed him. I think he's probably going to be the wide receiver 3, but it's crazy to me that people think it's a log to me. Because what we're seeing out on the practice field tells us that there's real competition there, because these guys are playing really, like, literally everyone who has been out there comes away impressed with Marcus Johnson. The guy's 6'1", he's 207 pounds, and he ran in the 4.3s at his pro day. This guy is not a guy that should be just written off and treated like he's some sort of practice squad scrub. Like,
well,
he has real physical ability, and if you've got real physical ability and you're starting to put it together from a consistency and mental side, that is exactly what it looks like he's doing right now, then you have something. You have a guy that could maybe bloom into a player. Like, what about like Zach Pascal? Zach Pascal was a nobody for this team. He's turned into a legitimate player for the Colts. Like, he's not a superstar. He's never going to be considered a superstar. But Zach Pascal has turned into a real useful NFL wide receiver. Just because the guy doesn't have some crazy pedigree does not mean that he can't turn into a good player. Khalif Raymond did the same thing here. He turned into a useful player. And Marcus Johnson is very much more physically talented than Khalif Raymond. He's more complete of a wide receiver than Khalif Raymond. He's a better player than Khalif Raymond, in my opinion. So I just think Marcus Johnson has done enough that we should be considering the fact that he may have a real role in the offense and not just be a backup or practice squad. Like, that's my main point here, is that Marcus Johnson has done enough to raise the eyebrows of everyone on that practice field right now.
I agree in that sense. And what you just said, I fully agree. Marcus Johnson's going to make the team and he's going to have a role. But it's going to be the Khalif Raymond role. It's not going to be the Adam Humphries role or what Josh Reynolds is going to turn into. It's going to be a limited role player role. And I think that people need to come back down to earth. Listen, I get it. No one had training camp last year. And it's been a while since, everybody got to go see and get wowed by all this stuff that happens in training camp and all this stuff. But we've talked about it on our podcast constantly, and we say this all the time. Don't get wrapped up with these wide receiver stories, because that's what's always going to happen. Granted, Marcus Johnson, like you said, and I believe this, is better than Khalif Raymond. He probably won't fall down if a defender farts in the area with the game on the line. I agree. But that doesn't say much. That doesn't say much to me enough to say, oh, well, Josh Reynolds, even though that he's played in the same offense for 4 years, and, he's actually proven to be a capable wide receiver 3, and when Cooper Kupp has gone down, a capable wide receiver 2, which is very important, because if Julio Jones or A.J. Brown went down with an injury, are you wanting Marcus Johnson to line up outside, or are you wanting Josh Reynolds to line up outside?
Listen, I mean, I'm just saying that right now, based on what we've seen out there, I would have zero issues with Marcus Johnson lining up across from A.J. Brown right now. That's what's happening a lot at camp, and he looks good doing it. I mean, he makes as many catches as just about anyone out there short of A.J. Brown, and he looks impressive doing it. He's not dropping passes. He's, constantly a target of Tannehill's. I just think he's been fantastic, and like I said, I went back and watched him with the Colts. It is certainly not a physical skill set issue with him. It has always been a consistency thing. And he's stringing together a bunch of practices in a row now that look really good. And so, look, agree. Like, again, everyone freaks out whenever anyone puts out anything like this, but it's a reading comprehension thing. Nobody's saying, look, Josh Reynolds is going to get cut. People are just saying, look,
people are saying that.
No, nobody's saying
Chris
it's
Sanders
a guaranteed.
Well, nobody's saying guaranteed, but they're saying I wouldn't be surprised if he got cut. Now, granted, it's Chris Sanders, and who the fuck cares? To be honest, who cares?
I would be surprised if he got cut. I think almost everyone is saying it would be a surprise if Reynolds got cut. It would not be as big of a surprise if he wasn't on the field every single time they went to 11 personnel to me. I think Chester Rogers could have a role. I think Marcus Johnson could have a role. I don't know that it's going to just be Josh Reynolds all the time lining up with Julio Jones and A.J. Brown. That's what I'm saying. And I don't think they're that far apart. And I think Reynolds is just at a place where he has to prove something. He's not so just like established at the NFL level that he has nothing left to prove. And, he's not like Julio Jones hasn't been out of training camp either. And of course, nobody's going to say, well, Julio Jones has to prove like Julio Jones has proved
That's
it well, of course, because he's done it at a completely different level. Is established. We know what Julio Jones is. Josh Reynolds had a decent year last year. Decent. Not great, not special. He's fine. Like, I just don't think that the gap between him and Marcus Johnson's that big. It's just not.
Oh, it's definitely bigger than what you want it to be. Listen, okay, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about the other wide receiver position, specifically Dez Fitzpatrick and Racey McMath. Who's not making the roster? Because one of them's not, right?
I don't know. I mean, this thing's become so muddled.
This is not something where I didn't want to like hold you to it or anything. But if they ended and did the 90-day cuts.
If I had to pick today, I'd pick Racey McMath between those two to make the roster. He's been better at camp. He's got, really he's the more impressive physical skill set. Now, not to say that Dez isn't impressive. I mean, he's a big guy himself, can run pretty well. But Racey's been more impressive in practice, and he brings the special teams pedigree too. That's going to be important to, whoever's going to be wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 on this roster. You're not keeping them because they're great backup wide receivers for the most part. You're keeping them because they need to be participating on special teams. They need to have some role if they're going to be active on game days.
Well,
besides
these guys would be 6 and 7,
playing
right?
actual receivers.
I mean, because
they'd be probably
6.
Yeah. This would probably be wide receiver 6 would be between those two. But I mean, they could keep 7. I think it's possible. I tend to not think they're actually going to keep 4 tight ends, just because what's the point of having 3 Jeff Swains on the roster? Because that's really what, Jeff Swaim, and then you've got Tommy Hudson, and then you've got Luke Stocker. Those are 3 Jeff Swaims. You don't need 3 of them. 2 is plenty. And then you stash 1 on a practice squad, and that way you have a backup in case somebody gets hurt. But I think if you go lighter at tight end, you only go 2 quarterbacks, of course. Maybe you go lighter at running back if you're just going to roll with Darrington Evans basically as the sole Derrick Henry backup, and then have Blasingame as the fullback / emergency running back, I guess. I think you could get to the numbers there to where you could justify keeping them all. But it's almost – Dez Fitzpatrick to me is almost in the worst spot because he's not showing – he's not flashing as a pass catcher, and he's not – I mean, he's not been bad. I don't think he's been bad. He's just not showing up. Like, he's not making splash plays like McMath is. He's not – which, I mean, nobody's thought McMath was going to do anything either. So he's not been that impressive as a pass catcher yet. Still early. We've got like a month to go before the regular season. But he's also not going to be like a big-time special teamer. Like, maybe he does end up earning some role on special teams, but he does not have that pedigree that McMath has. He does not have the pedigree that Nick Westbrook does, who, by the way, Nick Westbrook is still in the mix here. It's not impossible that he ends up making the roster as that 6th wide receiver because, he does still make a few plays in training camp, and they do really like him on special teams. So, I don't know. The wide receiver group is really interesting to me because there's like 9 guys that I feel like you could make a case for them keeping. Let me say
this. If Dez hadn't been drafted as high as he was, overdrafted and overvalued, would you still say that you could make a case for Dez Fitzpatrick and making this roster? Is the 4th round
probably
pick the only
probably
thing?
Not. Yeah, probably not. But the 4th round pick matters. Like it does because they clearly see something or saw something in him. Now, they have not been, I guess, shy about making quick adjustments to, hey, we made a mistake in cutting bait with guys. So I certainly think it's a non-zero chance that Dez Fitzpatrick just straight up gets cut and they try to sneak him onto the practice squad, and we'll see if they're able to get him there or not. But yeah,
let me say this: if they are able to get Dez Fitzpatrick on the practice squad, that tells you really what all the NFL really felt about it, and not what Dez's dad said they did.
Right. I mean, that would be pretty damning if they cut him and he goes through waivers unclaimed and goes onto the practice squad. That'd be pretty damning.
Chances are, though, he'd probably get picked up by like the Texans or the Cardinals or something,
I
you know,
I would
if
imagine
that
someone
happened.
would probably grab, because I mean, even if he didn't, quote unquote, have a third round grade for some teams or whatever Dez's dad said, you know, he probably wasn't too far off. Like John Robinson, I feel like him trading up, usually he's had good information previously on trade ups. Not saying he made the right choice to trade up, but generally speaking, other reporters have later come out and said, yeah, that was the guy that they were going to pick at, Rashawn Evans is an example. I think Pittsburgh was trying to trade up for him. The
I think
Patriots wanted to
Patriots,
take
yeah.
him. So there was reports that the trade up was justified if that's who they wanted, not that ended up being a good pick.
We would have already heard those reports though, right?
Maybe. I mean, there's a lot less interest with a fourth rounder than there is with a
I guess
first,
that's
right?
true.
So, I mean, and especially Des Fitzpatrick wasn't exactly a flashy name for, draft nicks out there anyway. So, yeah, but look, it would be pretty damning on them from a talent evaluation standpoint if they cut Fitzpatrick right after drafting him high in the fourth round, and then two, if he went through waivers unclaimed by 31 other teams. That would be pretty damning on their player evaluation there. I think it's a real possibility. And I don't know that they necessarily saw Marcus Johnson coming on like this. I don't know that they saw Chester Rogers coming on like this. Obviously, they liked them to some degree here for a reason, but both those guys have played better in camp than I think pretty much anyone expected. Now, like, look, I was a Marcus Johnson fan to some degree, just because I remembered watching him when he was in Indy and thinking he flashed there in limited opportunities. And then whenever the roster was sitting there and there was no real obvious wide receiver 2 on it, you start looking at the guys that are on the list and you're going, oh, Marcus Johnson's played a little bit in the NFL. So you go, maybe they really like, I don't know. So it's, I did
Everybody's
kind
the
of like
first
him.
person. All Titans media members are now the first person to claim that they actually fell in love with Marcus Johnson first.
I'm
They
not
started.
saying I was the first person to
Well, I will say
like
that you
Marcus
were.
Johnson.
You put it up. You put highlights up. There's a tweet. You remember we were talking this
I like,
morning about
yeah,
the gloves. Maybe it's a little facetious, but you were first
it was
on the
a
scene with
it
some
was a
Marcus Johnson
little
love.
it was a little tongue in cheek there with the wide receiver 2 stuff, but I legitimately did like what I saw from him. So it's I don't know that I'm necessarily the first Marcus Johnson person or anything. I'm not trying to claim that.
So
I only claim Ferkser. That is
Okay.
my real claim.
That's your claim to fame. Now listen, last one, Cam Batson. Is he going to make the team?
I don't know. I don't think so. I feel like Rodgers has passed him. I feel like it's just like they're only going to keep one out of that punt return group, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
it's Rodgers, Kinsey, and Batson are all kind of in that slot receiver / punt return mold. They're only going to keep one of them, and frankly, Kinsey has been more impressive to me than Batson in recent days in camp. Kinsey made some plays today that I thought looked pretty good.
Listen, TD said on 615 sessions that Mason Kinsey is probably their best option as a pure atypical slot wide receiver. I thought that was pretty interesting. A little interesting tidbit from Teron Davenport, if I'm saying that correctly.
I would probably lean Rodgers personally, just from what I've seen out there, but it's not a slam dunk, I don't think. Kinsey has come on lately. I thought Kinsey struggled the first couple of days that I saw him out there, but the last 2 that I've been out there, I thought he looked a little bit better, and today was the best day that I've seen from him. But they're only gonna keep one of that group, and I just don't think it's gonna be Batson. I really don't.
Let's move on to the depth chart. Just a little bit of the depth chart talk, not too much, because we do have a podcast. We need to save some of this for a podcast that will be out tomorrow, by the way. Fourth teamer Caleb Farley. So your thoughts on that, and are you worried that he may not even make the roster?
Yeah, he's buried behind Brian Bodie Calhoun, which is quite a tumble for the first round. No, it's first it's left to right, then down, and then left to right again on the depth chart. That is how you read the depth charts. Completely ignore where the rookies are, because Vrabel basically came out and said it yesterday. yeah, we put them at the bottom because they have to earn their spot, right? And it's a message sending thing. Everyone
Which
knows
is
it's not true.
it's not,
It's
let me say
posturing.
this. Let me say this. He says that, but they don't do it consistently every year. So
Right,
I just
right.
want to throw that out there. Like this idea that Vrabel was not involved whatsoever in the depth chart. I just have a hard time believing it. I just really do.
I
I
honestly
think it's all
wouldn't.
an act. I think it's
I
all
wouldn't
an
be
act.
surprised if he told Stretch to just, all right, put together a depth chart, put the rookies at the bottom. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the length of the conversation that he has with whoever puts that together. But Farley clearly being behind Brian Body Calhoun is a joke. Like, that's not happening. Same with Molden.
Well, it's
It's just not
obviously
happening.
also because of injury, right? I mean, let's be honest here.
But
There's a
but
lot of factors into it. It's a base defense. There's only 2 starting cornerback slots, and when preseason probably comes around, Farley, for the depth chart purposes, probably won't see the field a lot on Friday. And we'll get into expectations on that, but probably Body Calhoun or whatever his name is. It sounds like our fucking wrestler's name. Mayor Body Calhoun coming in to body slam you. Used car salesman.
Brian the Body Calhoun,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
like it.
I think that I think they'll be playing. Listen, I get it. There's only certain things you can take away from it. Caleb Farley being at number 4 and Elijah Molden being at number 5, not a big deal. And in fact, because this is a base defense and those are typically your outside starting corner slots, I don't think Molden will get much traction up the list unless there's cuts ahead of him, right? Because technically he's probably the last guy due to his athletic profile that you really want on the outside starting, right? So I mean, again, not a big issue. I'm just saying that it was kind of expected between those two guys to be probably at the bottom, regardless of their rookie stature or not.
Yeah, I think you should not read too much into this. Beyond the starters, like the starters, I think they put a little bit of thought into. But beyond that, it's just a general grouping and a general arrangement of where they are. And I think the things that you should take away from it are the Chester Rogers top punt returner thing. I think that's interesting and notable because they could have just as easily put Batson first. Batson's been with the team longer. It would have been the default option would have been, I think, to put Batson first. So them putting Rogers first there, I think, is meaningful. I would say that Sambrelo Lamb being the slash at right tackle is somewhat meaningful. I think
Well, that's not
Sambrelo has
how.
been
First off,
slept
you did
on a
not
little
read the.
bit.
Listen, you did not read the depth chart because that's not how you say Ty Sambrilo's last name.
Sambrelo, right?
No, Sambrilo. That's what it says at the bottom.
All
Just
right.
saying.
All
Just
right.
saying.
No, that's
I'm very
Bry. Sam
disappointed.
Brylo.
You said Braylo though.
Oh,
You got a little
well.
southern on there.
Yeah, I might have had a little twang in there.
All
Sorry.
right.
That's my Tennessee coming out. But no, it's I think Tyson Brylo is probably being slept on a little bit in that competition, partially because he's coming back from, I think Paul said it was Paul Kowarski said it was foot injury that he was returning from. So I think partially that's why he's a little bit being slept on there, but I would say it's more likely that both him or Quessenberry, as things stand right now, like again, like a lot can change over the next 3 or 4 weeks. But as things stand right now, I would say both Quessenberry and Sambrilo are more likely to be the starters at right tackle than our boy Dylan Radens. Radens is just, he's a rookie offensive lineman taking his lumps in camp. Look, this is I really don't want to make this comparison because people will run with it, but this is why when the Titans, when there was reports last year of Isaiah Wilson looking like crap coming out of training camp, and of course I was not able to be out there last year because of the COVID restrictions and everything else, and also me having a newborn baby at home and stuff like that. So I was not out there. So I was reading reports like everyone else. And when I read reports of a rookie offensive lineman looking like crap, I'm like, yeah, they usually look like crap. That's why I was a little bit slow on the throwing Isaiah Wilson into the fire thing and saying, all right, this guy just is a complete waste of space, because it's regular for offensive linemen to look bad right out of the chute as rookies. It just takes a little while, and that is especially true. And I think this is something that we have to keep in mind with both Radens and Farley. They Farley played 0 games last year because he opted out. He has not played an actual football game since November of 2019. So it's almost been 2 full years. It's been, a long time. So it's been a minute for these guys. Radens played 1 game last year and then participated in the Senior Bowl. Because North Dakota State did not have a season and they just played the one Trey Lance showcase game. So that was all he got to play, was this 1 game. So he didn't really have a season either. And he's coming from, obviously Division 1 AA or whatever they call it now, FCS, I guess, level all the way up to NFL. So I'm not shocked Radens is struggling a little bit. You'd hope that starts to improve as camp gets further along. And I think, he has the right work ethic and attitude to do that, unlike Wilson, which is, the biggest thing there. But it may not be week 1. I just don't. I think everybody should brace themselves for Sembrilo or Lamb to be the week 1 starter at this point, because that certainly looks like the direction that we're headed.
Was Lamb out there today? He wasn't, was he?
He was on the treadmill.
Okay. Do we know what the injury is with him for sure? Gotcha.
No, I'm not sure. There was a bunch of guys on the treadmill today.
Any other training camp highlights you want to hit on before we head into preseason expectations?
Let me check my notes here. There was, I thought the offense started strong in general. And then there was the defense kind of bounced back. They had a bunch of turnovers late. Brady Breeze had a pick 6 that looked like he tipped to himself and made the catch and took it back on kind of a short stick route. And then Kevin Byard had a great pick in the back of the end zone off of Tannehill. Tannehill was looking for A.J. Brown, who was kind of scraping across the back line of the end zone. And I think he lost track of Byard, who followed his eyes and kind of fell back, off of his underneath coverage responsibility to make the pick, which was a really nice play by Byard. And then the last pick was Matthias Farley, who Matthias Farley, not Caleb, made a pick off of Woodside on it. Really was a terrible throw by Woodside on deep post. And Brian, the body Calhoun, showing off why he's above first round pick Caleb Farley on the depth chart, got his hand in there, tipped it up, and Matthias Farley picked it off. So I thought the defense certainly rebounded after a little bit of a slow start today. There was no Bud Dupree in team period today. I don't think Landry was out there. I think it was a lot of John Simon, a lot of Wyatt Ray, a lot of Rashad Weaver. So I thought that was it. Practice today was interesting, as they do their call it periods where basically the offensive coordinator is just calling plays against the defense and the defensive coordinator doing the same, and they're just making it up as they go. So almost like a scrimmage. And it was good competitive, work for the most part. I thought it got a little sloppy there towards the end. There was like an offsides and then some really slow, just plays getting in for some reason. It just seemed the practice seemed to bog down towards the end, but, generally, pretty solid practice all around.
Are any of the offensive linebackers, are any of the outside linebackers behind Landry and Bud Dupree showing out and separating themselves from each other?
I don't know that I would say clearly separating. John Simon's made a few plays out there. He had a really nice pick. I think it would have been last week. When I was out there, then I like the look of Weaver. Like, he's long. He looks pretty athletic, moving around out there. I think Weaver, to me, looks like a guy that could be something. It's hard to really see. I'm really interested. I think he's going to play a ton Friday night against Atlanta, and I'm really interested to see what he looks like in that setting, because it's just hard to see sometimes how guys are doing with the way that they make these practices work, because they're not tackling to the ground. So sometimes guys are basically pulling up short, and so it's hard to see, well, would he have made the tackle, would he not? And then you also have obviously they're not sacking the quarterback, so it's hard to say Did he get close enough? Was he not? So, I don't think personally, I don't think the outside linebackers look that great so far. We have not seen much of Landry and Dupree, who you would expect to get the vast majority of the work there. So that's who you hope to be the big difference makers. But yeah, it's not as the interior defensive line looks way more impressive to me than the outside linebackers
Well,
do.
it sounds like they may be getting all the work if trends continue the way it is. Probably each getting 90% of the snaps. That will go great, I'm sure. Um, let's talk about preseason expectations. Give me three players that you're excited for.
I'll go with Weaver. I'm excited to see Weaver just to see what kind of he has in a game setting. I'm excited to see Monty Rice in this setting too. I know we had a question in the chat there from Zach G about Monty. I haven't really noticed him. It's so hard to notice inside linebackers in that setting. I mean, they drop into coverage a little bit, but they're not terribly often targeted except for just stick route here and there. So it's just hard to tell because like I said, they're not tackling to the ground, they're not doing any of that in the run game. They're just kind of fitting up and thudding up, that kind of thing. So I'm interested to see what Monty Rice looks like in that setting. And then I guess Racing McMath would be my other pick. I want to see, how his performance from the practice field translates out to the game field. But, there's a lot of guys. I think, all the rookies are going to be interesting just to see. That's kind of your first glimpse of them in extended game action in an NFL uniform. So all those guys I'm excited to see. I think they'll all play a lot with the exception of Caleb Farley. I don't think we'll see Caleb Farley. I don't think we'll see Julio Jones. I don't think we'll probably won't see Derrick Henry. We probably won't see AJ Brown. Maybe a series of Tannehill. I don't know. Probably no Lawan. It's going to be a pretty bare bones crew. And I will say this, I have some real concern about the way the offense is going to look on Friday night because the backup interior offensive line is not good.
Dylan Radens?
I mean, I don't know where they're going to play Radens is the thing. I don't know if they're going to play him at right tackle or if they're going to play him inside because the depth chart for the offensive line beyond the starters means nothing to me. Like that they've cycled and moved all these guys around. It's not been a set group consistently throughout camp. I don't know if we'll see Kendall Lamb or not. Like, we talked about earlier, he was off to the side doing bike stuff today. So I don't know if he's dealing with an injury there, but if he is, he's probably not playing on Friday. If he's not practicing on Tuesday is my guess, from a preseason deal. But yeah, I don't know who's going to be out there. And Daniel Munyer keeps putting snaps on the ground. They had another one on the ground today. I couldn't tell if it was Munyer because they were kind of far away when it happened. And the other guards might be what's his name, Chandon Herring and like Cole Banwart and like all these other guys that like I just don't know what you're going to get out of that group. And I'm worried about them being able to protect Logan Woodside. I'm worried about them being able to protect Matt Barkley, give them any sort of time. If I was a gambling degenerate who was betting on a preseason game, I would bet the under on this game. I would hammer the under. I don't even know what the line is. I would just hammer the under. I don't think they're going to score very many points because I just don't think the offensive line is going to be able to hold up.
All right, so here's the three people that I'm interested in. They're mainly second-year people. Darrington Evans, obviously, he's going to get a lot of the work, right? Him and Brian Hill probably will get the most work out of the running backs on Friday. But I'm all about some Darrington Evans. I love his game. I love what he can bring. I love his versatility. I want to see it on display, right? And I want to see Tierra Tart. I want to see. He may not play a lot, so the snaps that he does get, I want to see him dominate. I don't want him to see. I don't want to see a guy that's kind of getting, just kind of pushed around or not really giving his all. I want to see him dominate, and that goes the same for. You kind of gave four, so I'll give four. Laurel Murchison and Christian Fulton. I'm excited to see both those guys. It's mainly the second-year guys that I'm excited to see. Specifically, Christian Fulton. What can he do? How do they use him and utilize him? Because that's someone they can kick both inside and outside. And of course, Murchison will probably get extensive amount of playing time, and it'll be a playing time against people he should be better than, right? I mean, when you get into these second and third and fourth quarters, if you're playing deep into it and you're not flashing, that's a big sign. And that to me is what I'm looking for the most is when we get into these second, third, fourth quarters, who is dominating their level of competition. Because if you're not dominating the level of competition you're playing against, then there's issues with you got a long way to go for the rest of the preseason. There's only 3 preseason games. So it's season's right around the corner. Fantasy drafts are right around the corner. Speaking of fantasy drafts, the Flex is live on 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on Wednesdays. Coach's Corner is live tonight at 8 p.m., if I'm not mistaken, at Wild Hair. It's either 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. I guess I should have known that. And tomorrow, our podcast will be live probably around 9 in the morning. This has been, we haven't really named it, but, Titans training camp stuff. We talked it. We hope you enjoyed it. We answered your questions as we went through. So until next time, hopefully we'll get Twitter Spaces back rolling next time. So until next time, we are out.